I wasn't supposed to be home that night. And if I hadn't been, I never would have known. My name is Mark Halstead. I'm 52 years old, a senior logistics analyst based out of Fort Worth, Texas. I spent 20 years in the Army, most of it in supply chain operations, before moving into civilian defense contracts. These days, my job means long hours, rotating deployments, and remote oversight of military-grade freight logistics. I live just outside Denton in a practical brick house with a clean garage and a backyard grill I haven't used in almost a year. I've been married to Rachel for 23 years. We don't have children. She's a licensed therapist, thoughtful, articulate, and always 2 steps ahead in conversation. At least, that's how others see her. Until recently, I did too. I flew in early from Doha, not because of any emergency, just a shift in rotation. My replacement arrived sooner than expected, and the logistics office found me a seat on a military transport. I didn't call Rachel. I wanted to surprise her. I pictured walking through the front door, catching her mid-laugh at some reality show, maybe ordering takeout and enjoying a quiet night. Nothing special. Just normal. Familiar. When I turned into our street, the first thing I noticed was the house looked darker than usual. The porch light was off. Rachel always left it on. Her SUV was in the driveway, but no light showed through the front windows. Inside, everything was quiet. The kitchen light was on, but the rest of the house felt paused, as if someone had been there but wasn't expecting to be seen. There were 2 wine glasses in the sink. Rinsed, not washed. One had a faint fingerprint near the rim. There was an empty takeout container from a Thai place we'd never ordered from before. Rachel always said Thai gave her headaches. She must have changed her mind. Or maybe it wasn't hers. Upstairs, our bedroom was too neat. The bed was made, the nightstand cleared. Her work tote was zipped and stacked in the corner, but her laptop and phone charger weren't there. The framed photo of our anniversary in Seattle was gone from the hallway wall. In its place, a faint rectangle of cleaner paint stood out. She walked in around 10. Said she'd stayed late at her peer consultation group, something she'd mentioned before. I nodded, said I'd flown in early. She blinked. Smiled. No hug. No warmth. Just a kind of composed surprise. She said she was tired and disappeared upstairs. The next morning, she was gone before I woke. A note on the coffee machine read, "Back-to-back clients. Lunch with Dana. Home late." Dana is her college friend. I didn't question it. I checked our banking dashboard. It wasn't something I did often. Rachel handled the bills, she liked to keep things organized. But the savings account was nearly empty. Just over $1,500 remained. We'd had almost $90,000 in there when I left 3 months ago. I didn't react. I clicked through. The money hadn't vanished in one transaction, it had been drained methodically. Transfers to a private checking account I didn't recognize, all under Rachel's name, but with a new bank. The notes on the transfers read like business reimbursements. Training, equipment, travel. I opened our shared expense folder, the receipts weren't there. I checked the business card statements. No matches. But there were other charges. Hotels in San Antonio. A restaurant in Austin. Spa services billed during weekends. She said she was visiting her sister. I didn't confront her. Not then. Instead, I checked the utility drawer in the hallway where we kept spare keys. One set was missing. Her spare, the one she used to lend to neighbors or house sitters when we were both gone. I opened the safe in the bedroom closet. The copy of our house title was still there. But there were new papers I hadn't seen. A notarized document with her signature. Power of attorney, assigned to someone named T.M. Weller. I closed the safe. I closed the drawer. I sat down and opened the laptop again. In her office desk, buried behind folders of client referrals, I found a plain envelope. Inside, a printed draft divorce petition. Unfiled. But dated. 2 weeks ago. Filed during the exact week I was on double shift rotation in Doha, with zero access to civilian internet. She hadn't told me. She hadn't discussed anything. She had started planning long before I returned. And this was only the beginning. What she did next, you wouldn't believe it if I told you. Suspicion doesn't come with a siren. It comes like a leak, one drop at a time. You don't notice it at first. Then one day, you realize the floor is wet. I didn't confront Rachel after finding the unsigned divorce petition. I put the envelope back exactly where I found it, as if I'd never seen it. I wasn't ready for confrontation. I needed to understand how far she'd gone, and how long this had been building. So I started watching. In the first few days, I noticed a shift, not dramatic, just off. She wasn't cold, but she wasn't warm either. She was polite. Functional. Like she was playing the role of a wife, but reading from a script. One evening I suggested we cook dinner together, like we used to. She said she wasn't hungry yet and had things to catch up on. She retreated to her office and closed the door, something she rarely used to do. That night, I walked past her office and noticed the window ledge was bare. The candle, the leather-bound notepad she loved, gone. Her workspace looked minimal, temporary. Like she didn't expect to be there long. I didn't say anything. But my mind started dragging old memories into new light. How quickly she'd minimized eye contact lately. How she skipped small talk. How she no longer asked how my day was. Another day I came home and found her keys tossed on the entry table, not hanging where she always kept them. And there was a new handbag sitting by the stairs. Cream leather, small, expensive looking. I'd never seen it before. After 23 years, you know everything someone owns. New things stand out. On Saturday, she said she had to work at the library. Something about catching up on notes. But she didn't come back until nearly 9. The local library closes at 5. When she walked through the door, she smelled faintly of perfume I didn't recognize. Monday, I stopped by the gas station near her office. The barista recognized me. "Hey, Rachel's husband, right?" I nodded. "She's been coming in during lunch lately," he said casually. "Used to be just mornings." I forced a smile and said nothing more. That evening, I offered to take her to dinner. She paused, just for a second, then said, "Not tonight. I've got a tough client session tomorrow." Same answer, different day. The next morning, I tried to talk lightly. Asked if she felt we were out of sync. She smiled, too fast, and replied, "We've both changed. You were gone for 3 months. I had to learn how to function alone again." It wasn't a lie. But it wasn't the truth either. I started waking up early. Listening. She'd be in the kitchen, talking softly on the phone. When I walked in, the conversation would end abruptly. She'd tap her phone screen and say, "Client stuff. Sorry." Every other day she went into the city for vague errands. Came back with nothing in her hands and tiredness in her voice. I found a receipt in her coat pocket from a gift shop across town. In the back of her closet, tucked behind a shoebox, I found a jewelry case, a bracelet still tagged. Not her style. Not mine. Expensive. While she showered, I checked her desk drawer. No obvious secrets, but the contents looked rearranged. Like someone had tried to reset it without knowing where things truly belong. None of this proved anything. But it didn't have to. I wasn't hunting for an affair. I was tracking a pattern, the rhythm of a life that used to feel familiar. And it was gone. Then she told me she'd be unavailable most of the day. No explanation. No details. I nodded. I didn't need answers anymore. Because the next morning, something arrived in the mail. Not for her. For me. And after I opened it, everything changed. When trust fades, it doesn't crash like glass. It settles like dust, quiet, invisible, until one day it's everywhere. After I found the draft of the divorce papers, I didn't say a word. Not because I was afraid. Because I understood, once you ask a question, you get an answer. But you lose the opportunity to observe. So I began to watch. Everything on the surface seemed unchanged. Almost. Her movements were just a little softer, her smile a touch too gentle. Like someone who knew they were being watched, and wanted to look perfectly natural. I started noticing small things. She parked her car farther down the street, on the opposite side. Said the neighbor took her spot. But the neighbor had been out of town for 2 weeks. I checked. There was a new jewelry box on the dresser. Boutique label from Austin. We hadn't been to Austin together in over a year. Inside was a silver bracelet, thin chain with blue inlays. It didn't match anything she usually wore. But it looked intimate. She began turning off Wi-Fi on her phone at home. Battery dies too fast, she'd say. But she used to leave her charger by the bed. Now it was always in her purse. I ordered a credit card report. Small charges, coffee shops in other neighborhoods, a new salon she hadn't mentioned, food delivery from a place we'd never tried. Same amounts, every weekend. Repetition is always the first warning. I bought a second hard drive. Transferred copies of all our documents, bank statements, screenshots of her calendar. Not because I was going to use them, but because I knew one day I might have to. Her laptop never left her side. Even in the kitchen. Even the bathroom. She said, "Client notes, confidentiality." It was too convenient. Too rehearsed. She told me she had a conference coming up. I nodded. Didn't ask where. But that day, her suitcase wasn't filled with business clothes. I saw evening shoes. Not heels for a seminar. Heels for something else. That night I checked the shared desktop. Browser history showed an old search. How to temporarily remove a co-owner from a house title without notice. 2 weeks ago. I scheduled a legal consultation. Olivia Quinn. Calm, analytical, mid-40s. She listened without blinking. Then asked, "Are you ready for a long game?" I said, "I'm already in it." I didn't change my routine. Didn't raise my voice. But I found myself avoiding her eyes. One evening I found her notebook left open on the table. Same logo as the boutique where the bracelet came from. Inside, a list of reminders. Appointments. Hours. Most were nothing. But one line stood out. Tuesday, 2:30 p.m., side entrance, garage. No address. No name. I closed the notebook. Put it back exactly where it was. Too many coincidences. Too few explanations. I didn't know who she was with yet. But I knew one thing for sure. That person had already entered my home. There's a difference between knowing something's wrong and being shown just how wrong it really is. That Tuesday, I took the afternoon off. Told the office I had an appointment. I parked 4 blocks from the address I'd quietly extracted from our shared GPS history, a boutique complex near Westover Hills, Fort Worth. She had been there 3 times in the last 2 weeks, always on weekday afternoons. I sat in my truck with the engine off, windows cracked. No camera. No binoculars. I didn't want proof. Not yet. I wanted presence. The unfiltered truth, however it chose to reveal itself. At 2:34 p.m., she pulled in. Same beige Lexus, same calm posture. Hair done. Makeup subtle but deliberate. Not the look of a therapist heading to session. Not even close. She entered through the side garage door. I waited. Watched others come and go. Nothing unusual, professionals, deliveries, a dog walker. But at 3:09, something caught my eye. A man left the building from the same side entrance. Well-dressed. Athletic. Maybe late 40s. He paused at the corner, pulled out his phone, smiled at something on the screen. Then walked to a black Audi. Texas plates. Custom tag. I didn't recognize him. Not then. But when I got home and checked our HOA directory, I found the name. Travis Weller. He lived 7 houses down. I'd waved to him a dozen times. We'd grilled on opposite patios during 4th of July. He lent me a ladder last spring when I cleaned the gutters. I didn't tell Rachel anything that night. I didn't need to. Because at that point, I knew the game she was playing. And she had no idea how far ahead I already was. 2 days later, a package arrived. No return address. Inside, 2 things, a plain USB stick and a folded sheet of printer paper. On it, in block letters, "If you want more, plug it in. But only if you're ready." I stared at the flash drive for a long time. Not because I feared what was on it, but because, for the first time in months, I realized I wasn't the only one watching. The flash drive stayed on my desk for 3 days before I touched it. Not out of fear. Out of discipline. When I finally opened it, I did it on an air-gapped laptop, no internet. Old habit from work. The files were simple: screenshots, time-stamped videos, and 3 PDFs. I recognized the location immediately: the boutique building on Westover Hills. Camera angles from the parking structure, lobby, side entrance. She wasn't careful. He wasn't either. They hugged in public. Kissed outside her car. Left together. Returned together. But that wasn't the part that mattered. One PDF listed the names on a newly opened joint account, not ours. A second showed a deed change for a property I didn't know existed, a small townhouse in Abilene. The third was a partial draft of a financial affidavit. Her name at the top. Mine not mentioned. It wasn't just infidelity. It was erasure. And so I moved. Quietly. Legally. Precisely. First, I withdrew half of our joint savings, the exact legal threshold permitted without notice. Moved it to a separate account under a business entity I controlled. Created before the marriage. Untouchable. Second, I called Olivia Quinn, my attorney. We filed a motion to place a temporary hold on all jointly held property. Preventative. Procedural. The court approved it within 48 hours. Third, I froze access to the portfolio I'd managed for years: retirement, residuals, bond dividends. She never learned the passwords anyway. I just changed the ones I knew she guessed. And then, I made a copy of the flash drive. One went into a locked safe deposit box in Arlington. The second, straight to Olivia. We scheduled a formal review of all marital assets. Rachel was notified. By then, she hadn't even filed for divorce yet. She was still smiling across the dinner table. Still playing the part. She called the bank that week. Learned the accounts were frozen. Called our accountant. Heard about the legal motion. I watched her face during those days. Confusion first. Then doubt. Then silence. She tried to talk to me one night. Asked if I wanted to go away for the weekend. Somewhere quiet. I said, "I'm not planning trips right now." She stared at me. Waited. I didn't blink. Because that was the night I checked the visitor logs from the HOA security feed. And saw her mother's name. Logged in. Twice. While I was overseas. But the second date was the day after my father's funeral. It wasn't rage. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity, the kind that doesn't shake your hands, just straightens your spine. The annual HOA meeting was held in late May, in the local elementary school auditorium. Everyone came, board members, neighbors, even the ones who usually stayed silent. Rachel and I always attended together. This year, I arrived alone. She walked in 15 minutes later, wearing the same navy blazer she used for professional events. She smiled, nodded to neighbors. Sat 3 chairs down from me. Not a glance. I had asked the board president for 5 minutes to raise a financial concern impacting shared community risk. Vague, official sounding. He gave me the floor just before adjournment. I stood. Calm. Held nothing in my hands but a folded letter. "I'd like to bring to attention a pattern of covert asset manipulation involving a member of this HOA, their private property, and a misrepresented declaration filed under this address." The room shifted. People turned. Rachel looked up slowly. I continued. "Records show unauthorized financial arrangements registered under a shell entity linked to a business partner of this household." Still calm. Still measured. That partner, I added, also happens to be a licensed clinical psychologist who has referred multiple clients into a shadow practice, operated under a second identity. Now she moved. Her hand tightened on her chair. You see, the man from the parking structure wasn't just a neighbor. He was also a former client. One she had treated years ago, quietly reconnected with, and then brought into her practice. Not as a patient. As a silent co-owner. They were building a new clinic. Together. Registered under his name. On property bought with joint marital funds. A conflict of interest. A breach of ethics. And a criminal misuse of funds. I handed the letter to the board. Not a speech. Not a shout. Just the facts. The letter wasn't addressed to them, though. It was a certified notification to the state licensing board, filed through my attorney 2 days prior. Rachel stood, stunned, lips parted as if a word was trying to escape but couldn't form. And then came the second turn. I stepped closer. Leaned in just enough for only her to hear. The company you used to buy that property with him? It's registered in my name. Since last fall. She blinked. Her face froze. You built your new life, on my land. And I walked away. The fallout was swift. 2 days after the HOA meeting, Rachel's clinic website went offline. Her business partner disappeared from public listings. A week later, her license status on the state board portal changed to under review. She didn't come home that night. Or the next. I didn't call. Instead, I went to the storage unit I'd rented 6 months earlier under a separate name. Inside, duplicates of every document, timeline charts, receipts, notarized letters, all neatly packed, labeled backed up. I didn't gather them out of paranoia. I gathered them because I knew this ending wasn't hers to write. One evening, Olivia, my lawyer, slid a folder across her desk. Inside, notarized testimonies from 2 of Rachel's former clients. Both confirmed they had been referred to her co-owner, while she billed them under her own credentials. Insurance fraud. Documented. Sealed. But it was the second folder that held the real twist. A letter. Dated 6 months ago. Handwritten. From Rachel's former office assistant. She had seen the emails. Heard the phone calls. The assistant suspected things long before I did. And when Rachel fired her abruptly, claiming, downsizing, she took copies. But instead of going to the board or the police, she came to me. Quietly. Through Olivia. Because, and here's the turn, she had once worked for a private investigator. She recognized the patterns. She didn't want money. She wanted someone to actually fight back. That's how I got the flash drive. Not from some anonymous source. But from someone who saw the same lie I did, and refused to let it stand. Rachel served me with divorce papers 3 weeks later. It was almost sad, the way she signed them. No confrontation. No apology. Just paperwork slid across a table at Olivia's office. She tried to claim partial ownership of assets she'd hidden. But the court saw through it. The judge awarded her none of it. The property? Mine. The accounts? Sealed and protected. Her reputation? Collapsed by her own ambition. I still live in the same house. It's quiet now. But not empty. I have coffee in the mornings on the back patio. Same chair. Different view. Sometimes neighbors still ask me what happened. I just say, some things fall apart. Others get rebuilt. The trick is knowing when to let go. She destroyed the illusion. But I rebuilt the truth. And when I walked out of that courtroom for the last time, I didn't look back. She was sitting alone. No lawyer. No ring. Just silence.